Chapter 1. The House That Still Knew My Name. I came home thinking I was burying my father, not preparing for a war with my own family. Within days, my brother accused me of manipulating a dying man. My mother stayed silent, and the local news called me unstable because of my military past. They didn't just want the house, they wanted to erase my name, my service, my sanity. My name is Olivia, and this is the story of how silence almost destroyed me and why I chose to let the law speak when my family tried to take everything. My hands were numb by the time I found the spare key, not from the cold, but from the way the metal trembled against my palm like it remembered me better than the people inside ever did. The house sat above the water on a low bluff outside Port Angeles, Washington, the kind of place that looked peaceful in postcards and lonely in real life. Gray sky, gray sea, bare trees combed flat by winter wind. I had driven up from Tacoma after sunrise on December 31st, telling myself I was doing the responsible thing, that I was showing up, that I was still someone's daughter even after years of being a uniform instead of a person. I was 44, and I had spent most of my adult life learning how to be calm while everything inside me shook. I learned it in training. I learned it overseas. I learned it in hospital waiting rooms and military funerals and the long silence after a call that came too late. But there was a different kind of shaking that starts when you pull into the driveway of the place you grew up and realize your body remembers every crack in the pavement, even if your family pretends you are a visitor. The porch light flickered as I stepped up. The wood boards groaned in the same spots they always had. For a second, I expected my father's voice, warm and tired, telling me to come in before I froze. Instead, there was only the wind and the distant slap of rocks against rocks. Inside, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and old cedar. Someone had tried to make it feel fresh. It only made it feel staged, like a house prepared for strangers to tour. My mother's voice carried from the kitchen, soft, controlled. She was talking to my brother, Cole, the oldest, the golden one, the one who stayed. I paused in the entryway, boots still on, duffel bag cutting a red line into my shoulder. I listened not because I wanted to spy, but because I could not help it. In my line of work, you learn to read what people do not say. "He will be here soon," my mother said. A pause, then Cole, dry as paper. "She, not he. She will be here soon." My chest tightened. It was such a small thing, a single word, but I had always noticed how language shifts when someone is trying to distance themselves from you. I stepped forward so they could hear me on purpose. The heel of my boot hit the old tile, and the sound echoed through the hallway. My mother appeared first, wiping her hands on a dish towel as if I had caught her in the middle of something important. She looked smaller than I remembered, her hair gone more silver than brown, her mouth set in a line that could be concern if you squinted. Her eyes flicked over me, uniform coat, duffel, the tiredness I could not scrub out of my face. "You made good time," she said. I nodded, because the truth was I had driven like I was racing someone, and I did not know who. Grief, guilt, the old stupid hope that maybe if I arrived fast enough, I could still be wanted. Cole came into view behind her, leaning his shoulder against the doorway like he owned the frame. He had my father's height and my mother's certainty. He wore a clean sweater, expensive watch, the kind of ease that comes from living in one place long enough that life feels like it belongs to you. "Look at you," he said, and the words sounded like a compliment until you heard the lack of warmth underneath. I set my bag down. "Hey, Cole." There was no hug, not from him, not from her. My mother stepped closer like she might, then stopped as if something invisible between us had hardened into glass. "I'm sorry about Dad," I said, because it was the only thing they could not accuse me of exaggerating. My mother's eyes went past me, to the hallway, to the framed photos, to the years my father had already become a memory. She gave a small nod. "We're doing what we can," she said. Cole cleared his throat. "The lawyer is coming at 3. We should keep things simple. No scenes." No scenes, as if grief was a performance I might ruin. I swallowed. "I can handle simple." My younger brother, Jonah, came in last, like he had been waiting for the right moment to appear without being noticed. He had always been that way, quiet, careful, a person who survived our house by becoming invisible. Jonah's eyes met mine for a second. There was something there, a flicker of apology, maybe, or fear. Then he looked down. "Hey, Liv," he said. Hearing my name from him hit me harder than it should. Olivia Mercer. Liv, the name I used to answer before I became Captain Mercer, before I became the woman who always left. I forced my face to stay steady. "Hey." The hours before 3 crawled. I walked through the house with my coat still on, touching familiar things as if they could prove my father had been real. The dent in the banister where I had crashed my bike at 11. The faint scratch on the kitchen table when Cole carved his initials and blamed me. The narrow hallway outside my old bedroom, where I used to press my ear against the wall at night, listening to my parents argue about me like I was a problem to solve. My father had been the only one who spoke to me like a person, even when he did not understand me. He would sit with me on the porch after Cole's soccer games, after my mother's forced smiles, after the weight of being the wrong kind of daughter settled on my shoulders. "You do not have to fit the mold, Liv," he used to tell me. "Just don't let them convince you you are broken because you are different." I had believed him. I had joined the army at 18. I left this house with a duffel bag and a stubborn kind of hope. I told myself distance would make everything cleaner, that if I became impressive enough, they would have to love me without condition. But love in this house was always a contract, and I was never good at signing. At 3, the lawyer arrived with a leather folder and a polite smile that felt practiced. His name was Martin Healy, late 50s, tidy hands. He spoke softly, like grief was fragile glass. "Thank you for being here," he said. Cole shook his hand like they were closing a business deal. My mother sat at the dining table, hands folded, eyes dry. Jonah hovered near the doorway, uncertain. I took the chair opposite Cole and felt for a moment like I was back in a briefing room waiting for someone to explain the plan I had not been included in. Martin opened the folder and began. He spoke about my father's passing, about paperwork, about the importance of clarity. He never once said the word love. Then he read the will. Cole received my father's investment accounts and his share in the small marine repair business he had run with a partner for decades. That made sense. Cole was always the heir, the one my mother could point to as proof she had done something right. Jonah received a smaller trust, enough for a down payment on a house, enough to keep him quiet. That was how our family worked. Silence, bought in installments. Then Martin looked at me. "Olivia Mercer is to inherit the family property at Crescent Bluff, including the residence and the surrounding lot." For a second, the room went so still I could hear the refrigerator hum. Cole's head snapped up. My mother's fingers tightened around each other. Jonah's breath caught. "It's not worth much," Cole said quickly, as if the house itself had offended him. "The foundation needs work. The bluff is eroding. It's a liability." My mother's eyes cut toward him, sharp. He did not stop. "Dad was sick, you know that, right? He was confused near the end." My throat tightened. "Don't do that," I said softly. "Don't make him sound like he didn't know his own mind." My mother stopped moving. She set a plate down too hard. It clinked. "We all loved him," she said, "in our own ways." I looked at her. "Did you?" I wanted to ask. Did you love him enough to let him choose without punishing the child he tried to protect? Instead, I nodded once, because I had learned the hard way that certain questions only produce bruises. That evening, we ate dinner like strangers pretending to be family. My mother talked about grocery lists and property insurance. Cole talked about contractors and what he would do with the business now. Jonah picked at his food and stared at his hands. No one asked me how long I could stay. No one asked me where I lived now. No one asked me anything that would make me real. After dinner, I washed dishes because my hands needed something to do. My mother stood beside me, drying plates with sharp, efficient movements. "You were gone a long time," she said. I watched the water run over my fingers. "I was deployed." "I know," she said, and her tone made it sound like an inconvenience, like weather. Cole walked past, phone to his ear, already moving on. I caught one phrase. "We need to talk first thing tomorrow. No, don't worry, I'll handle it." My stomach twisted. Late that night, I sat alone in my old bedroom, the one my mother had converted into a storage room. Boxes stacked along the walls, a dusty lamp. The bedspread smelt like detergent and disuse. I heard low voices in the hallway, Cole and my mother. I could not make out every word, but I heard enough. "It's not fair," Cole muttered. "We'll fix it," my mother said, tight and certain. I closed my eyes. The house creaked around me like it was holding its breath. My phone buzzed on the bedside table just before midnight, an email notification. The subject line was formal, clean, almost polite. Notice of intent to contest estate. My pulse slowed in the way it always did right before something bad happened, like my body had learned to ration panic. I opened it. The message was from a law office in Seattle. It stated that a petition would be filed to contest the will on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. It said my father had been manipulated. It said I had taken advantage of his illness. It said the property was in dispute. I read it twice, 3 times. The words blurred and sharpened again. There was no mention of my service, not yet, but I could hear the next steps in my head because I knew this family's playbook. They would not fight me on the house. They would fight me on my identity. They would make me sound unstable, untrustworthy, the daughter who left and came back to steal. Outside, someone in the neighborhood set off a few early fireworks. The distant pops sounded like small gunshots swallowed by the ocean air. I stared at the email until my eyes burned. My hands did not shake, but my chest felt hollow, like something had been removed. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark water. The porch light cast a weak circle on the boards. The wind kept moving, indifferent. Inside the house, I could hear my mother's footsteps, the soft closing of a door, the sound of life continuing without me. That was the moment it finally settled. Not like a dramatic crash, but like heavy snow piling up until the roof gives way. This was not about money. It was not even about the house. It was about erasing me from the story they preferred to tell. I sat back on the edge of the bed and let the quiet press in around me. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that comes right before a storm you cannot stop. And for the first time since I had arrived, I stopped trying to convince myself I belonged here. Chapter 2. They didn't just want the house. By morning, the ocean looked calmer, and that made what was happening inside the house feel even more cruel. Like the world had decided it would stay pretty no matter what we did to each other. I woke up early, not because I wanted to, but because my body still ran on habit. Wake up, check the room, listen for movement, prepare for impact. I stood at the small sink in the hallway bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at my own eyes in the mirror until they stopped looking like they belonged to a visitor. Downstairs, I heard my mother moving around the kitchen, cabinets opening, coffee dripping, the soft clink of a spoon against a mug. Normal sounds, domestic sounds, the kind that used to mean safety when I was a kid. Now they felt like a cover. Cole was already on the phone when I walked into the kitchen. He held his finger up without looking at me, signaling me to wait, like I was an employee. "Yes," he said, steady and controlled. "I want the petition filed immediately. We cannot let her transfer anything. There is a 5-year restriction, but we can challenge capacity. Yes, undue influence. The judge will understand." My mother slid a plate of toast onto the table and did not make eye contact. She sat, folded her hands, and took a sip of coffee as if she had not heard a single word. Cole ended the call and finally looked at me. His face was smooth, almost pleasant, the kind of expression a person wears when they are trying to convince themselves they are being reasonable. "Morning, Liv," he said. My throat tasted like metal. "You were talking about me." He shrugged, like we were discussing weather. "We're talking about Dad's will. Big difference." I pulled out a chair. I sat. I kept my hands flat on the table so he could not see if they trembled. "It was his choice," I said. Cole smiled, and it did not reach his eyes. "Dad was sick. You were the one who showed up at the end. You were the one alone with him. It looks bad." My mother finally looked at me then. Her eyes were careful, like she was holding a fragile thing she could drop if she blinked too hard. "Olivia," she said, and my name sounded like a warning. "Please do not make this harder." "Harder," I repeated quietly. "I just got here." Cole leaned back. "You flew in, played dutiful daughter for a week, and somehow you walk away with the house. People are going to ask questions." "People?" I glanced toward the window, toward the neighborhood below the bluff, where a few lights were already on, where someone's dog barked at the gulls. People did not know my father. People did not know what he whispered to me the night before he died, his voice thin, his hand heavy on mine. "Promise me you will keep it, Liv. Keep the house. Keep something." I pushed my chair back and stood. "I need air." Cole's voice followed me. "Run all you want, it's still happening." I stepped outside onto the porch. The boards were damp, the wind sharp. I breathed in salty air and tried to steady my heartbeat. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Another email, another subject line that made my stomach drop. "Hearing scheduled, probate court, January 10th. It was fast, too fast. I opened the message and read the attachment, a copy of the petition, Cole's name on it, my mother listed as an interested party, the grounds, undue influence, diminished capacity, then the part that felt like a hand closing around my throat. Concerns regarding petitioner's mental stability due to history of military service and potential post-traumatic stress. I stared at that line until my eyes blurred. They were going to make my service a weapon. They were going to take the thing I had sacrificed years for and turn it into evidence that I was unfit to inherit my father's last request. I walked back inside. My boots left wet marks on the floor. Nobody said anything about the mud. I held my phone out to my mother. "Did you know they wrote this?" She did not take it. She just looked at it like it was a snake. Cole answered for her. "It is a standard angle. It is not personal." "Not personal?" I said. "You put PTSD in a court document about me. You think that is not personal?" Cole's expression hardened for the first time. "Maybe you should not have disappeared for 2 decades if you wanted the benefit of the doubt." My jaw clenched. I did not disappear. I served. My mother's voice got tight. "Enough, both of you." I turned to her. "Mom, you're letting him do this." She pressed her lips together. "I'm trying to keep this family together." I almost laughed, but the sound died in my throat. "This family is together. You are all on the same side." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the refrigerator hum again. Then Cole ticked up his coffee like the conversation was over. I left the kitchen before I said something I could not take back. By noon, the first crack appeared in the world outside the house. I went into town to pick up groceries, partly because my mother had claimed we were out of basics, partly because I needed to see if people could still look at me like a human. At the small market on Front Street, the cashier was a young woman with a nose ring who smiled politely until she scanned my card. "Mercer?" she said, glancing up. "Are you related to Harold Mercer?" My throat tightened. Yes, he was my dad. Her smile faltered. "Oh, I'm sorry. People have been talking." People have been talking. The phrase landed like cold water. "Talking about what?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She hesitated, then leaned closer as if she was doing me a favor. "About the will, about the house, about you being away and then showing up, about the whole thing. I'm sure it's just gossip." I nodded because there was nothing else to do. I paid. I walked out with a bag of groceries that suddenly felt too heavy. In the parking lot, I saw Mrs. Danner, our old neighbor, loading groceries into her trunk. She had baked pies for my father every Thanksgiving. She had hugged Cole when he got his first job. She had once told me I was brave for joining the army. I stepped toward her. "Mrs. Danner?" She looked up, saw me, and her face changed. Not anger, something worse, discomfort. "Oh, Liv," she said, voice thin. "I heard you were back." "I am," I said. "I came for Dad's funeral, and I'm helping Mom for a bit." She nodded too many times. "Yes, yes, of course. Such a shame. Harold was a good man." "He was," I said. She shifted her keys from one hand to the other. "Well, I should get going. It's cold." I watched her slide into her car without asking how I was, without asking anything that might make her part of the story. Back at the house, my phone buzzed again. Another news alert from the local online paper, Peninsula Beacon. Someone had shared the link with me. I did not recognize the name. A state dispute in Crescent Bluff. Military daughter accused of undue influence. My blood went cold. I opened it. The article was short but sharp. It mentioned the petition, it mentioned my father's illness, it mentioned concerns regarding my mental stability. It described me as estranged. It did not say I was a captain. It did not mention my commendations. It did not mention the nights I sat by my father's bed feeding him ice chips because his throat hurt too much to swallow. It painted a picture of a desperate daughter returning to claim property, a woman using her father's weakness, a soldier who could not be trusted. I scrolled to the comments, knowing I should not. If she has PTSD, she should be evaluated, not given property, another wrote. Military people snap, another. My hands shook then, finally, and I hated myself for it. I walked into the living room where Cole sat with his laptop. My mother was folding laundry like nothing had happened. Jonah was nowhere to be seen. "Did you do this?" I asked. Cole looked up slowly. "Do what?" I held my phone out. The article, the PTSD line, the way they're dragging my name through town. Cole leaned forward, read, then sat back. "Not my problem." I stared at him, stunned. "You are my brother." Cole's voice stayed calm. "You are making it sound like I leaked it. I did not. But if people are talking, maybe that's because what you did looks suspicious." My mother kept folding. Her hands moved like machines. "Mom," I said, "say something." She did not look up. I cannot control what people say. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. You can control what you do. She finally lifted her eyes. They were tired, or maybe they were empty. "Olivia, please, we lost your father. Do not turn this into a war." I stared at her, and for a second I saw the shape of my whole life. Me begging to be seen, them asking me to be quiet, me swallowing anger because it made their lives smoother. I turned and went to the back deck. The wind hit my face like a slap. I gripped the railing until my knuckles ached. An hour later, my phone rang again. An unknown number. I answered anyway. "This is Liv." A man's voice, formal. "Captain Mercer, this is Trevor Lane, commander of the local VFW post in Port Angeles. We received a message regarding your membership and your service record. We just need to verify a few things." Verify? I repeated. Why? There was a pause. We're getting ahead of rumors, that's all. Someone suggested there may be concerns about your stability. We would prefer to handle it quietly. Quietly. Again, that word. I swallowed. You can verify my record through the Department of Defense. My discharge is honorable. My evaluations are clean. Another pause. Of course, we just have to follow procedure. I ended the call and stared out at the water. The world looked the same, but it had shifted. My family had not just challenged a will, they had challenged who I was. I went back inside and walked down the hallway until I found Jonah in the small laundry room, sitting on an overturned basket, elbows on his knees. He looked up like a man waiting for a sentence. Jonah, I said softly, tell me the truth. Did you know they were going to do this? His eyes darted toward the door. He swallowed. I knew Cole was going to contest. I did not know it would be like this. Like this? I repeated. Like they would use my service against me? He looked down at his hands. He thinks it's the easiest way to win. And you? I asked. What do you think? Jonah's voice was barely audible. I think he wants more than the house. My heart thudded. What do you mean? Jonah's jaw tightened, like he was trying to hold back something that had been pressing against his ribs for years. There's something you need to see, Liv. I can't send it, not yet, but there's something. Dad kept records, and Cole's been hiding things. My throat went dry. What things? Jonah shook his head, and his eyes finally met mine, wet and scared. Tomorrow. I'll show you tomorrow. I just need you to promise me you won't blow up. If you go loud, they will crush you. I stared at him. My chest was full of fire and ice at the same time. Every part of me wanted to storm into the living room, throw the article at Cole's face, demand answers, demand apologies I would never get. But another part of me, the part that had survived worse than this, understood what Jonah was really saying. They want me to react. They want me to look unstable. They want me to prove their story. I exhaled slowly. Fine, I said. Tomorrow. Jonah's shoulders sagged with relief, and that relief made me sadder than anger ever could. That night, I lay on the narrow bed upstairs, listening to the house settle. I could hear Cole's low voice downstairs, the steady cadence of another phone call. I could hear my mother's footsteps, quiet, purposeful, moving like she was keeping everything tidy while the family fell apart. My phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark now, but I could still see the headline in my mind, the way my name had been reduced to a warning label. Outside, the wind kept coming off the water, patient and cold. I did not write a post defending myself. I did not call the paper. I did not show up at the VFW to plead my case. I lay there and let the anger burn down into something harder, quieter, more dangerous. I would not give them the version of me they were trying to sell. Chapter 3. The quiet brother broke the silence. The next morning, I drove away from the house before anyone could corner me into another polite conversation that felt like a trap. The sky was low and bruised, and the water along the strait looked like cold steel. I kept both hands on the wheel and let the road do what it always did for me, narrow my thoughts down to something survivable. Jonah had texted me just after sunrise. Meet me at Edda's Hook, by the lookout. Noon. Come alone. Edda's Hook was neutral ground for us, a thin strip of land where the wind never stopped and nobody stayed long. When we were kids, Jonah and I used to sit in the car there after fights at home, eating gas station candy and watching the water like it could wash the day off us. Cole never came. He never needed a place to hide. I parked near the overlook and stepped out into air that bit through my coat. Gulls circled above the rocks. The smell of salt and diesel drifted in from the harbor. I stood facing the water and waited, feeling the same tight coil in my chest I used to feel before stepping into an unfamiliar village overseas, the sense that something was about to change and I would not be able to undo it. Jonah's car pulled in 10 minutes late. He sat behind the wheel for a moment like he was gathering courage, then got out and walked toward me with his hands shoved deep into his pockets. His shoulders were hunched against the wind. His eyes were red, either from the cold or from a night without sleep. He stopped a few feet away and looked past me at the water. "Did they call you again?" he asked. "The VFW called me," I said, "and the paper wrote me up like I was a threat. So yes, they called." Jonah's jaw tightened. Cole's proud of how clean he thinks it is. He thinks if he stays calm enough, it becomes truth. I watched him carefully. Jonah had always been the brother who tried to keep peace by taking up less space. Seeing anger in him felt like seeing a new color in an old photo. "You said you had something," I said. "You said Dad kept records." Jonah nodded once. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black USB drive, the kind you can buy at any office store. It looked harmless, like nothing. He held it between two fingers like it weighed more than it should. "This is part of it," he said. "The rest is on my laptop. I didn't want to bring everything." I stared at the USB. "What is it?" Jonah swallowed. Emails, bank stuff, scans of documents, a draft of a change Dad tried to make before he died. Cole stopped it. My pulse thudded, slow and heavy. "How long have you had this?" Jonah looked down at the gravel under his boots. "Since October." The wind gusted hard. I felt it push against my back like a hand. "October," I repeated. "Dad died in November." Jonah flinched. "I know." "Jonah," I said, and my voice came out sharper than I meant. "You watched this happen?" He lifted his head, eyes wet now, and for the first time, he looked like someone who had been carrying something too heavy alone. "He watched," he said, "and I hated myself for it. But I thought if I stayed quiet, Cole would back off. I thought he would just take what he wanted and leave you alone." I laughed once, without humor. "You thought he would leave me alone?" Jonah's jaw tightened around the USB. I was wrong. I took a step closer. The ocean behind him roared in slow, endless motion. "Show me," I said. "Tell me what you know." Jonah exhaled, long and shaky. "Do you remember Dad's fundraiser every summer? The one for veterans? The one Mom bragged about at church?" I nodded. "The Harbor Lights benefit. He said it helped local vets with rent and groceries." "It did," Jonah said quickly. "At first, Dad started it because he meant it, but Cole got involved a few years ago. He started managing the money. He started using your name." My throat tightened. "Your name?" Jonah nodded. "He told donors you were part of it. He told people you were advising. He used your rank in the flyers and the emails. It made it sound official. It made it sound like it had military oversight." A coldness spread through my chest. "I never agreed to that." "I know," Jonah said. "That's why I'm telling you. Cole used it because he knew you wouldn't be here to stop him." I stared at Jonah, and the world narrowed into small details, his chapped lips, the tremor in his hands, the way he could barely look at me. "What did he do with the money?" I asked. Jonah hesitated. "Some of it went where it was supposed to, enough to keep it looking real, but a lot of it didn't. He paid contractors for the business. He covered debts. He moved money through a couple accounts Mom helped him set up." My stomach turned. "Mom helped?" Jonah's face crumbled for a second. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself it was protecting the family. She told herself you would never know. I tasted salt and realized my eyes had started watering, and I hated that my body always reacted before my pride could stop it. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would she do that?" Jonah stared out at the water like it was easier than looking at me. "Because Cole scares her, because she thinks the family is him, because she's always treated you like the risk." I let that land, not like a dramatic punch, but like a bruise you press and realize it has been there for years. "You said Dad tried to change something. What?" Jonah lifted the USB a little, like offering proof. "Dad found out. He started asking questions. Cole lied. Mom told Dad he was confused, but Dad wasn't confused. He was angry. and he tried to lock it down. My breath came shallow. How? Jonah looked back at me. He met with Martin Healy, the same lawyer. He wanted to add a codicil. He wanted to put the Veterans Fund under a third-party oversight. He wanted to name you as trustee for the house and restrict Cole from touching anything connected to the fundraiser. My heart hammered once, hard. And Cole stopped it? Jonah nodded. Cole found the appointment notice on Dad's calendar. He went over there the night before and told Dad he was humiliating the family. He told him you would come home and take everything. He pushed him until Dad got so exhausted he backed down. Then Cole called Martin and told him Dad didn't want changes. Dad was too tired to fight. Then he got sicker. I stood still, and the cold felt far away now because something hotter had replaced it. Jonah, I said, why are you telling me now? Jonah's voice broke. Because I can't breathe in that house anymore. Because I watched them turn you into a rumor. Because last night I heard Mom say maybe you are unstable, and she sounded like she believed it, and I realized they're not just trying to win, they're trying to erase you. I closed my eyes for a second. The wind pushed hair across my face. I thought of the article headline. I thought of the court petition. I thought of my father's hand on mine, weak but sure. Promise me you will keep it. I opened my eyes and looked at Jonah. You knew since October, and you still let them file? You still let them put PTSD on paper? Jonah flinched like I had struck him. I know. I thought I could fix it without dragging you into it. I thought I could talk Cole down. You can't talk someone down who enjoys standing above you. Jonah nodded, tears finally slipping down his face. Quick and embarrassed, he wiped them with the back of his hand like a kid. What do you want me to do? He asked Tona. Tell me, Liv. I'll do it. I stared at him, at my little brother who had been quiet his whole life, finally standing in front of me with the truth bleeding through his hands. For a moment, a darker path opened in my mind, bright and sharp. I could go loud, I could call the paper, I could post the emails, I could burn Cole's name in public and watch the town turn on him the way the town had turned on me. I knew how to fight. I had done it in places where rules were written in dust and fear. But this was not that kind of war. This was my home. This was a court. This was my father's legacy. If I went loud, Cole would point at my anger and say, "See, she's unstable." If I went loud, my mother would fold in on herself and claim she was a victim. If I went loud, Jonah would retreat again, and I would lose the one witness willing to stand beside me. I took a slow breath and let the ocean sound fill the space where my rage wanted to speak. We do it clean, I said. Jonah blinked. Clean? Legal, I said. Documented. No posts, no shouting, no threats. We take this to someone who knows how to handle it the right way. We let facts speak. Jonah nodded fast. Relief and fear tangled together. Okay. Who? I need an attorney who understands probate and defamation, and I need someone who understands nonprofit fraud. Jonah stared at me. You think it's that serious? I looked at the water. If Cole used my name to move money, yes, it's serious. And if Mom helped, it's worse. Jonah's voice went small. Are you going to destroy them? I turned back to him. I kept my face calm, because calm was the only weapon they had not managed to steal from me. I'm not going to destroy anyone, I said. I'm going to stop them. There's a difference. Jonah swallowed, and his shoulders loosened slightly like he was waiting for permission to believe I could be strong without being cruel. I held out my hand. Jonah hesitated, then placed the USB in my palm. It was warm from his skin. One more thing, Jonah said, voice low. Cole has more. I only copied what I could. He keeps a folder on his laptop. He calls it household. But it's not household stuff. It's plans. Plans for what? I asked. Jonah's gaze flicked away. For you. For how to make you look like the threat. For how to keep the town on his side. The wind gusted again. A gull screamed overhead. My fingers closed around the USB until the edges bit my skin. "Tomorrow," Jonah said quickly, like he could hear the storm building in my chest. "Tomorrow I'll get more. Just give me one day. I need to be careful." I stared at him. I wanted to demand everything now, to rip the truth out of the air and force it into daylight, but I also understood what it meant for Jonah to walk back into that house after this. "One day," I said, "but you do not go alone into a room with him if you can help it. You keep your phone on you. You keep it recording if you need to." Jonah nodded, eyes wide. "Okay." We stood there a moment longer, two grown adults on a windy overlook, still shaped by the same family that taught us how to survive by swallowing words. When Jonah walked back to his car, he turned once and looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all the times I let you stand alone." I watched him drive away, his taillights fading into the gray. I stayed by the water until my hands went numb again, not from cold this time, but from the weight of what I now held. Back in the car, I stared at the USB in my palm. It looked like nothing. It felt like everything. I did not feel relief. I did not feel triumph. I felt a steady, quiet resolve settling into place, the kind that comes when you finally stop hoping people will do the right thing and start preparing to prove the truth the right way. Chapter 4. I let the law do what anger couldn't. The courtroom smelled like old paper and radiator heat, the kind of heat that dries your throat before anyone even says your name. I sat at the petitioner's table with my hands folded, not because I felt calm, but because I needed my body to look calm. My attorney, Mara Ellison, leaned in close enough that only I could hear her. "You are not here to win their approval," she whispered. "You are here to show the record." I nodded once. Across the aisle, Cole sat beside his lawyer, a man in a navy suit with a smile that never reached his eyes. Cole looked the way he always looked in public, steady, polished, like the type of son people trust. My mother sat behind him, hands clasped around a tissue, her shoulders drawn up as if she was already bracing for sympathy. Jonah sat alone on the bench behind me. He had offered to sit beside me, but Mara told him not to. "It reads better if he is not coached," she said. Jonah's eyes met mine briefly. There was fear in them. Not fear of me, but fear of what he had set in motion. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Judge Renee Carver was a woman in her 60s with a sharp gaze and a tired mouth. She looked like someone who had heard every kind of family story and stopped being surprised years ago. We sat. The clerk read the case name, Mercer Estates, and for a moment, hearing my last name in that room made me feel like my father's ghost had taken a seat beside me. Cole's lawyer stood first. "Your Honor, we are here because the decedent was vulnerable," he began. "In the final months of his life, he was isolated, he was confused, he was influenced by a daughter who had been absent for most of his decline." He turned slightly, just enough for the judge to see my face. "And there are additional concerns about the petitioner's stability, given her military history, and a documented pattern of impulsive decisions." My stomach tightened, but I kept my eyes on the judge. I did not blink, I did not react. Mara rose slowly. "Your Honor," she said, "the other side is attempting to turn service into suspicion. We will not argue feelings. We will show documents, timelines, and transactions." Judge Carver's gaze sharpened. "Proceed," she said. Cole's lawyer called my mother first. My mother walked to the stand like she was walking into church. Her hands shook as she swore in. She sat with her tissue folded neatly in her lap. When she looked at me, her eyes filled, and for a second the room tilted, because no matter how old I got, there was a part of me that still wanted her to choose me. Cole's lawyer kept his voice gentle. "Mrs. Mercer, can you tell the court about your husband's condition in the months before his passing?" My mother nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. "He was tired," she said. "He was not himself. He forgot things. He would repeat stories. He would get confused about dates." "Was Olivia present during that time?" he asked. My mother glanced at me again. She came near the end, she said. She was alone with him a lot. She was very determined. Determined how? The lawyer asked. My mother swallowed. Her voice trembled. She kept saying the house meant something. She kept telling him he needed to protect her. I worried he was being pressured. I felt something crack inside my chest, not because it was new, but because it was my mother, placing my father's last choice on a shelf labeled mistake. Mara stood for cross-examination. Her tone was quiet. Mrs. Mercer, did your husband ever tell you he wanted Olivia to have the house? My mother hesitated. He said it was important. Important why? Mara asked. Because he felt guilty. Mara nodded once, like she expected that answer. Did your husband ever meet with his attorney about modifying his estate plan in October? My mother's eyes flicked toward Cole. I don't recall, she said. Mara turned slightly and held up a printed calendar screenshot. This is Harold Mercer's appointment entry for October 14th. Meeting with Martin Healy, estate update. Are you saying you do not recall that? My mother's lips parted. She looked as if she had been caught with her hand in a drawer. I didn't handle his calendar, she said. Mara's voice stayed even. Did Cole handle it? Cole helped. He helped with a lot. Mara let that sit, then asked softly, Mrs. Mercer, did you or Cole ever tell Harold that Olivia might have post-traumatic stress? My mother's eyes widened. No. Mara took a breath. Did you ever tell anyone that Olivia might have post-traumatic stress? My mother looked down. Silence stretched long enough that the judge shifted in her chair. Finally, my mother whispered, Cole said it. I told him not to use those words. Mara nodded once. But you did not stop him. My mother's shoulders collapsed a fraction. I couldn't, she said, and the room heard the truth under it. I wouldn't. When my mother stepped down, she did not look at me again. Cole's lawyer called me next, but Mara stood before he could. We will reserve the petitioner, Mara said. We call Jonah Mercer. Jonah walked to the stand like a man walking into a confession. He sat, swore in, and looked straight at the judge. He did not look at Cole, he did not look at our mother. He looked at me once, and there was a quiet apology there. Then his eyes returned forward. Cole's lawyer stood sharp now. Jonah, you live in the family home, correct? Yes, Jonah said. And you are aware your mother is financially dependent on your brother. Jonah's jaw tightened. She lives with him. You've had conflict with Cole in the past. You're not impartial. Jonah's voice stayed steady. I'm not here to be liked. Mara stood for direct examination. Jonah, did your father schedule an appointment to update his estate plan in October? Yes, Jonah said. Did he attend that appointment? No. Why not? Jonah swallowed. His hands clenched and unclenched on the witness stand. Because Cole confronted him the night before. Cole told him Olivia was trying to take everything. Cole told him changing anything would make the family look suspicious. Dad got exhausted. He backed down. Cole's lawyer jumped up. Objection, speculation. Judge Carver's gaze narrowed. Overruled. He is describing what he witnessed. Mara's voice stayed calm. Jonah, did your father express concern about the Harbor Lights Benefit Fund? Jonah's throat worked. Yes, Jonah said. He found out money was moving in ways he didn't approve of. The air in the room shifted. People leaned forward. Mara placed a folder on the podium. Jonah, do you recognize these emails? Yes, Jonah said. Who are they between? Between Cole and several donors, and between Cole and my mother, and between Cole and a contractor for the marine shop. Cole's lawyer stood, voice tight now. Relevance. This is a probate hearing. Mara turned toward the judge. It is relevant, because the contest is based on a narrative that Olivia manipulated a vulnerable man for property. We are showing motive, and we are showing why Harold Mercer attempted to restrict the property and update his plan. Judge Carver held up a hand. Proceed, she said. Mara looked back at Jonah. Jonah, did Cole use Olivia's name in fundraising materials? Jonah's eyes flicked toward me, then back. Yes, Jonah said. He used her rank. He implied she oversaw the fund. She did not. Mara nodded and reached into her case. She lifted a printed flyer. On it, in bold letters, was my name, Captain Olivia Mercer, advisory partner. I felt heat rush to my face, not from pride, but from violation. My name had been turned into a prop. Mara spoke gently. Jonah, where did the funds go? Jonah took a breath. Some went to veterans, enough to look real, but a lot went to cover debts for the marine shop, and some went into an account my mother helped set up. Dad found out. He was angry. He wanted to lock it down. That's why he wanted the estate update. The courtroom went silent except for the scratch of the court reporter's keys. Cole's lawyer rose again, voice clipped now. Jonah, are you accusing your mother of fraud? Jonah's voice shook, but he did not stop. I am saying what I saw and what I copied. Mara turned to the judge and placed a thicker binder on the evidence table. Your Honor, she said, we have already provided copies to counsel who specializes in nonprofit compliance. We are prepared to provide them to the appropriate agencies. We are asking this court to pause the estate contest because the credibility of the contesting party is now directly tied to a potential misuse of charitable funds. The judge looked at the documents, then at Cole, then at my mother, then at me. For a long moment, she said nothing. The room held its breath. Finally, she spoke, slow and heavy. I am ordering a temporary stay on the contest, pending review. The clerk will provide copies of these submissions to the court's fraud unit. I am also directing that the matter be referred for appropriate review. Cole's lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, we object. We have not had time to review these allegations. Judge Carver's voice hardened. You will have time. This court will not be used to launder reputations or bury misconduct. We are done for today. Her gavel came down once, not loud, but final. Everyone rose again, chairs scraping the floor. The sound was too ordinary for what had just happened. I stayed seated for a second because my legs did not want to work. My chest felt hollow, like I had been running for miles and only now realized I had been holding my breath. Mara touched my arm. It's paused, she said quietly. That's what we needed. Now we keep it clean. I nodded. Across the aisle, Cole did not look at me. He stared at the table in front of him like if he looked up, the room would see who he really was. My mother stood frozen, tissue crushed in her fist, eyes wide with a kind of fear I had never seen in her. Not fear for me, fear for the family story she had spent her life protecting. Jonah moved toward me slowly, like he was approaching something fragile. I did it, he whispered. I looked at him, my quiet brother, and I realized the courtroom had not changed us into enemies. It had simply forced the truth into the open. We walked out into the hallway where the air felt cooler, where voices echoed off the tile. People passed us without meeting our eyes. Outside the courtroom door, as my mother finally spoke, her voice thin, breaking. Olivia, she said. I turned toward her. I waited. She opened her mouth as if she might apologize, as if she might say my name like it belonged to her, but no words came out. The silence between us was heavier than any accusation, and it followed me down the corridor like a shadow, quiet and inevitable, like everything was already falling, and we were only just hearing it start. Chapter 5. What They Lost and What I Kept. But because I stopped holding it together, the days after the hearing moved with a strange softness, like the world had turned the volume down while something important reset itself. The court issued its orders quietly. The estate contest stayed frozen. Federal agencies began asking questions that did not come with smiles. Cole stopped calling. My mother stopped leaving her door open. I returned to the house alone. The first night back, I walked through every room without turning on the lights. I let my hands trail along walls my father had painted himself. I sat on the back steps where he used to drink his coffee and listen to the water, and for the first time since his death, the place did not feel like a battleground. It felt tired. It felt ready to rest. The news did not stop just because I did. Articles followed, some careful, some cruel. There were headlines about a family torn apart by greed, and others about a decorated officer standing her ground. Comment sections filled with strangers who decided who I was based on a paragraph in a photo pulled from an old fundraiser flyer. Some people wrote that I should have kept it private, that family matters belong behind closed doors. Others said they wished someone had spoken up for them when they were silenced. I learned quickly that public opinion is a weather system. You can prepare for it, but you cannot control it. What surprised me most was how little I wanted to respond. I met with investigators once. I answered questions with dates and documents. I handed over what I had. I did not add commentary. I did not tell them how it felt to hear my name used as bait, or how my mother looked smaller when the truth caught up with her. I let the facts do the work I used to think anger was for. Jonah came by on a quiet afternoon, bringing soup like he used to when we were kids and one of us was sick. We sat at the kitchen table, steam rising between us, and did not talk about court or money. He finally broke the silence by saying he was looking for a new place. He said it like a decision, not a confession. I nodded and told him the spare room was his if he needed it. He did not take me up on it, but his shoulders eased when I offered. My mother did not visit. She sent a letter instead, written in her careful handwriting, the kind she used for holiday cards. It said she was tired. It said she was confused. It said she hoped time would heal things. It did not say sorry. I folded it and placed it in the drawer with the rest of the paperwork. I understood then that accountability does not always arrive wearing remorse. Sometimes it arrives as distance. As weeks turned into months, the house began to change, not in big ways, in quiet ones. I fixed the loose railing on the back steps. I replaced the cracked window in the upstairs bedroom. I cleared out boxes that had been stacked so long they felt like part of the walls. One morning, I found my father's old ledger in the garage, pages filled with careful notes about the fundraiser he had started, names, amounts, thank you reminders written in the margins. He believed in it. That mattered. The idea came slowly, like most good ones do. I spoke to a local nonprofit director who worked with the veterans transitioning out of service. We talked about short stays, about a place to breathe, about a house that could be a pause instead of a prize. I kept the plan small, 2 rooms, clear rules, no publicity. When the first guest arrived, a former medic with tired eyes and a duffel bag rack 9, I did not give a speech. I showed him the room. I told him where the coffee was. I told him the water was loud at night, but you get used to it. After he left weeks later, steadier than when he came, I sat on the porch and felt something settle in my chest that I had not felt in years. Not victory, not revenge, purpose. Cole's world shrank in ways I did not track closely. I heard things through town the way people hear storms forming far offshore. Business partners pulled away. Invitations stopped. He became careful in public, quieter than before. Power looks different when it is no longer assumed. My mother stayed in the house they shared, but the neighborhood did not greet her the same way. The church bake sale stopped asking her to chair committees. People remembered more than she expected. Silence has a way of returning what it was meant to hide. I did not celebrate any of it. I slept better. I woke without bracing myself for the next hit. I started running again along the bluff in the early mornings, letting the cold air remind me I was still here, still capable. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the water turned silver, Jonah joined me on the porch. We did not talk much. We did not need to. He finally said he was proud of me. I told him I was proud of him too. When he left, I stayed seated and listened to the house breathe. It no longer felt like a thing I had to defend. It felt like something I could offer. I thought about the version of myself who arrived here with numb hands and a duffel bag. The woman who thought belonging was something you earned by staying quiet or impressive or useful. She had done her best with what she knew. I stood and went inside, turning off lights one by one. The house settled into its night sounds, wood shifting, pipes ticking, the familiar comfort of a place that remembers you without judgment. If there's anything this taught me, it's that truth does not need volume to be heard. It needs patience, it needs evidence, it needs someone willing to stand still enough for it to catch up. And if you've ever found yourself painted as the problem because you refuse to disappear, if you've ever watched silence be mistaken for weakness, I hope you remember this. You do not have to burn everything down to protect what matters. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is hold your ground, tell the truth cleanly, and let the rest unfold. If this story resonates with you, if you've lived a version of it in your own family or workplace or heart, you are not alone. You are welcome to share what you carried and how you found your way through. Sometimes hearing each other is how we learn that dignity was never something they could take from us.